So everyone, with me today, I have Beth Jones. She is a healing mentor, an inspirational speaker, and a best-selling author. Beth, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Very happy to be here, Philippa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? And also, where are you?
I am doing very well today, and I am in Dallas, Texas.
Wonderful. And I hear you have some less than pleasant weather at the moment, so hopefully it stays good enough for the rest of the day at least.
Hopefully so, yes. Where are you?
Today I'm actually down in London, but normally I'm in the Forest of Dean, which is on the border of Wales in southwest England. So a bit of a road trip today.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's get into it. What is a healing mentor, and how did you become one?
A healing mentor is something that I have created myself to be. How I got there, and actually I believe, based on what I've researched so far, I might be the only one that's out there, which is a great thing for me. Yeah.
You say.
How did I get here? I've been on a journey for about 4.5 years of deep personal and professional transformation. And those two have come together to get me to a place where I work with people now and speak as much as I possibly can to spread my message about healing for people who are also survivors of trauma and abuse, which I am. And that's what my healing journey has been about in the last 4.5 years, is sort of overcoming the effects of surviving those experiences in my life. And I have learned a great deal based on my own process to heal. And I want to share that with the world. I want every other survivor out there to know that they too can heal and overcome the effects of trauma and abuse in their lives. So that's what I do now as part of my professional work, which is radically different than what I used to do. But now I spend a lot of time speaking with people in groups and one-on-one about finding their healing pathway and walking it.
Amazing. I love that. We're going to go back to sort of, you talked about being a survivor. And firstly, the choice of word is obviously very important. Often people refer to themselves as victims rather than survivors. What is it for you? What was your journey to being a survivor? And when did the shift come for you?
My journey as a survivor began when I was 5 years old. I was sexually abused at that age for the first time in my life, and then went on to live for another 45 years where I experienced other forms of trauma and abuse, several different ways from various relationships that I was in, some people that were close to me, some people that were just sort of passing through my life momentarily. All of that had an effect on me to where I lived not in a great way, in what I call my unhealthy survivorship. 45 years, I really was chained behind a wall. So when I was abused for the first time, it was my grandfather who I had that experience with. And that experience really locked me behind a wall that I grew for all those 45 years. So all of my unprocessed trauma, unprocessed abuse, and all the emotions that I carried inside of me for all those years built this massive wall around me, where at the end of those 45 years, just before I turned 50, I found myself in a place where I was quite alone and very lonely because of the life that I was living at that point in time. I accidentally stepped into a hypnotherapy session one day in June of 2020. And that was my gateway to get onto my healing pathway. And that event was also life-altering for me, or what they refer to as, some people call it the lifequake event. People might even call it hitting rock bottom, sort of the end of me living the way that I was living. But I walked in to the hypnotherapy room as one person, and that person stayed in that room and never walked out. And me, walked out. And I've spent the last 4.5 years breaking that wall down and healing myself from where I was at that point in time in my life.
That's just an amazing sort of undertaking that you did. And it's great that you've been able to do that. When trauma starts so young and it's a family member as well, what as an adult, before you started to process everything and make the transformation for yourself,
Right.
what sort of emotions did you experience? And I ask for other people who may be in the same position of, was it your fault? Did it make you angry, frustrated? What was that emotional roller coaster that you've been through? And at what point, again, did you realize it wasn't your fault?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I've never had it posed exactly that way before. When that happened to me, because I was so young, I really went inside of myself and almost became emotionless. And so I held a great deal of emotion in me and held that, deep within inside of me and never really processed it out, which was what my challenge was because I never got it out. It sat inside of me and just sort of stifled me from being the person who I am. Like really built a wall around me. Um, when I when I came to when I came to identify what I had been through with him as sexual abuse, so I used to refer to it as just being sort of touched inappropriately, and there were some other things in the family that were occurring. It was like fragments of a story that existed all around me for many, many years. And when I went into the hypnotherapy, that event was so profound to me because that was the opening of me really understanding that all of these things I had heard about in the family and experiences I had sort of came together to say to me, hey, and it was the universe or God, higher power, creator, source, spirit, however you want to refer to that being, saying to me, hey, this happened to you. It's time for you to own it. And when I say own it, I don't mean that in a negative way, like I was rejecting it or not owning it. I just never respected it for what it actually was and how it impacted me and what it was doing to me in my life. So after I got to the place where I could acknowledge it for what it was and realize, the only time you mentioned my choice of the word survivor versus victim, and I do appreciate the fact that I was a victim in the moment when he abused me. And when I've had specific experiences like that since then, those are, I'm a victim in the moment. There's a victim and a perpetrator, right? And so I would be the victim in the moment. So I was able to acknowledge all of that. And as I did, and it came time for me to heal the relationship with my grandfather so that I could go on to do the rest of my healing work, I at that point in time let out a whole lot of emotion. There was a lot of emotion attached, not just with him, but with other people who had also caused me challenges in my life that all decided to come out. And so it was about a 9-month period after the hypnotherapy when I was on an emotional roller coaster. And some days I would be in deep despair and hopeless, very sad about my life. I was also confused about who I was and scared that I was in some confusion about who I am. And if I don't really know me, then how can anybody else know me? And that caused me some fear. But I went through the natural emotions that you might expect around being very angry with him for a period of time. Never did the emotions come to me. I did feel shame. I had to deal with shame. That was one of the emotions I had to deal with, but blame for myself. Never, because, at 5 years old, you know, 5-year-old isn't the cause of anything like that, right? I mean, a young child has no responsibility for that type of an experience. And so, and I've always known that, and perhaps because, I was 50 when I started the healing process. And so maybe just logically and intuitively, I knew that. How on earth can a 5-year-old be responsible for something like that, right? So I did carry shame with me, although that actually has to do with something that I experienced when I was 15. And I was day raped and then bullied when I was 15. And that's really where more of my shame came from than when I was a child. I think for me, the important thing that I would say for me as a 5-year-old child is I really went into myself and just really kind of lost myself and became almost completely emotionless. And I would say in many ways, maybe just hoping that people wouldn't see me as how I was for many, many until I became an adult.
And that's so hard. And what we tend to find, as you know well, is is those first 7 years are so formative for children, and it can be the foundation on teenage, adult, all the way through. And of course, some things happen to children. Some less dramatic things happen to children, but they still carry with them into adulthood. And so it's not surprising, as you know, that you've had to go through this process, but it's also great that you have gone through the process and can now help others. And I think it's
wonderful.
And I think the reason I really glad you're here is that help other people hear that and go, also, it doesn't matter what age you come to this point where you can work through the trauma. The thing is, you can. One of the other observations I've had with trauma is there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about, obviously, the physical impact of your psychological state. Did you, consciously or unconsciously, were you aware of any physical challenges along with processing everything? Did you see a shift in yourself once you start to unlock this box of your emotions?
Not physically. So I've always been in really good health, and I'm quite active. And, that may be part of the reason why I didn't have the physical manifestations. I've read that book. It's a great book, by the way. And it's on my, on my webpage. It's on the resources page of my website. I really like it quite a lot. I discovered that I could run for fairly long distances quite easily when I was in my mid-30s. And I'd already been quite active for a number of years, as an adult before that. But I feel like that movement for me and being out in nature, which I absolutely love, I think that was sustaining me and helped me to live through those years before I was at the point ready to do the deep healing work. So I was married for almost 30 years. So, I got married when I was 21 and met my now ex-husband when I was just before my 18th birthday. Sorry, just before my 19th birthday. And I picked up the running and the movement about probably halfway into our marriage. And I think that really helped me a lot. He too is a survivor of various trauma and abuse. And he was two survivors living together, which made the relationship challenging for me, where I eventually gave everything that I had, and I'm an extreme caregiver. And for me, if I'm with somebody who needs a lot of care, I can get taken advantage of. I just can give everything away. That's how it's one of the challenges that I face in those types of relationships. And I feel like that movement for me, and I know I expressed a lot of emotion and I could process a lot, and I can process a lot when I'm moving. And I feel like my path, maybe God protecting me, led me to that place when I was in my mid-30s to pick that up as part of my healing process. Because I know today, with what I've been through, where I've really been very focused on healing, and I know exactly what my path has been like since I had the hypnotherapy event. That outdoor movement for me, and now whether it's running or walking or hiking, it doesn't matter, is huge for me. Processing. In fact, you'll appreciate, I've done EMDR quite a lot, and that rhythmic pace that you get into with EMDR, I can incorporate into my movement. I didn't know that's what I was doing back then, but when I first started really, moving a lot, but I feel like that was probably part of what helped me physically to keep the emotions from doing some damage to me, right? Whether it would have been some sort of illness or injury, or just my body wearing out, right? I think that helped me some with that.
Definitely. I mean, running is and being outdoors, like I said, they're two very powerful ways of processing its own way that you found that. You talked about forgiving your grandfather and other people. Why was that important for you?
Well, it's interesting. So, the concept of forgiveness is an interesting one for me. And actually, it's the reason that I even wrote. I wrote a book recently, came out about a month ago. And getting to the place where I was going to write my book, one of the major steps in making that decision was doing some research on books about forgiveness. And this began with a conversation with my trauma therapist. She was kind of picking my brain from like a research perspective. She likes to know sometimes what's happening up here in my brain. And it was that kind of a conversation. Yeah, right. It was that kind of a conversation we were having. And that led me to do a bunch of research to look for books on forgiveness. And ultimately, I wrote the book that I couldn't find, is really where I ended up. For me, it's not really about forgiveness. And I think, one of the things that I found, and I've always believed, I think forgiveness is is a very difficult concept for a lot of people and very misunderstood. And in fact, when I was doing the research, one of the things that I found that bothered me is I could break most books into one of two categories. They would either tell you that you needed to forgive to heal or heal to forgive. So literally, they were the opposites of each other. And I was like, okay, no wonder people are confused, right? That's not my experience. My experience in healing the hurtful relationships in my life has really been about getting to a place where I have been able to release the emotions that I had toward those people. So the healing process really began with me coming to a place where I could accept myself as a survivor. And I knew that as a result of being a survivor, there were some things that I was doing in my life and some ways that I was living my life that weren't great. It's what I call my unhealthy survivorship. And I could see myself, I'm reading books about survivors, and I could see myself in all these books, but I could also see other people who had hurt me. So I could see my grandfather, I could see my ex-husband, I could see both of my parents, I could see all of us who are all survivors in these books. And I got to a place where I was able to have grace for and acceptance of myself as a survivor. And once that happened to me, I was able to then, what I call mirroring, and I could reflect that grace and acceptance onto other people who had been in my life who had hurt me because they were all the survivors. I understood that that's most likely where their experiences were causing them to interact with me in my life in ways that were painful and hurtful, but it was because they were survivors themselves. And that really allowed me to accept them for wounded individuals, and to release the emotion that I had toward them that was really binding my heart and causing me to not be able to engage in healthy relationships with people, deep, meaningful relationships with people. So it's really more about that, what I would call letting go, as opposed to forgiving. And it's important because I'm letting go of the emotions that I have toward them. Let's take anger, for example. If I'm angry with someone, I'm the person that's suffering under the weight of that anger. And it's causing me to not be able to really know love, which is ultimately the reason to heal. Right? So for me, the word heal is an acronym that means to hope, evolve, and love. And ultimately, the reason that we need to heal is so we can truly know love. But if we're holding emotions inside of us associated with being a survivor, going back to the moment when we were a victim, if you go back to that place. So if you do carry blame for yourself or shame, you have anger for the other person, all of those are emotions they just lock our heart and cause us to not really be able to engage in deep relationships with people. And that's the reason why it's so important to heal, is to free ourselves so that then we can truly be able to be the people who we truly are, who we were always meant to be before our trauma, before our conditioning, and could go on and to love ourselves and also love other people who are in our lives.
Brilliant. And I want to pull out the point you made about often people who commit abuse are also survivors. And there's expression there, hurt people who are hurt people. But also I think
Yes,
people aren't always aware of generational trauma and how that is passed down. With people who served in wars, we talked about that with people from World War II and World War I, having this lost generation. But even in 2024, you have people who have seen terrible things, been in terrible situations. And although our understanding of how to process these things have increased, the willingness to go out and address it in yourself isn't always there. And so the fact that you have been able to go, okay, these people were doing the best they could with the tools they had at the time. They didn't perhaps have have a great experience themselves, and all they know is how to repeat that cycle. Though it doesn't change what happens, it doesn't make them better people, but the perceptions shift though from they were doing it because they're bad people as opposed to they're doing it because they're hurt people and don't know how to be different or haven't been taught differently. It is a massive difference, but it still takes a lot for you as an individual who's gone through that to find that love and compassion as well.
Yes. It's, that I hear that a lot, phrase hurt people, and that's true. And I think where I came to, and the reason why I really wanted to go through the process and do the work, and it's hard work to go through and heal myself. The reason I really wanted to do that is because the person that I was hurting the most was myself, right? Hurt people. And I was hurting me by the way that I was living my life. And I realized, as I started walking my journey, I very quickly started reading those books I sort of alluded to a moment ago, where I was reading other survivors' stories. And I understood that the reason that many of us are living our lives the way we are as survivors is because other people had hurt us. And when I realized that, and when I realized the person who was getting hurt the most by me was me, that was completely unacceptable to me. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not living like this anymore. It was like an epiphany from me. My eyes were suddenly wide open to what was happening to me. And so I call the universe touches, where I felt as I walked my healing journey, the hand of God like literally come down and touch me, right? And say to me, yes, you've got it, or you're on the right path, or keep going, right? And it was one of the first times that I ever felt that. And I'm sure I'd experienced it before, but when I was really consciously aware that that was what was happening to me divinely, and it just like my mind just opened up and I was like, this is crazy. I'm like, I'm not living like this anymore. And I don't have to, right? Other people did things to me that were causing me to live my life like this and hurt myself. And I'm just done. And I made a commitment at that point to go through. I was going to do anything at that point in time that I had to heal myself. And I think it was revelatory for me. And I think, I would say to any of your audience who are listening to this, if you can, if just what we're talking about here, if you can just hold on to that, hurt people. And many times for us as survivors, the person we're hurting the most is ourselves. If you just grasp onto that and make that decision to say enough, you really are really making the decision to do the work to heal yourself, which I believe is one of the greatest gifts that we give to ourselves as survivors, is taking that first step to say, I don't want this anymore, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to move forward. It's really loving ourselves enough to commit to do the work, to be in a very different place, which I am. I am your living testament to being in a very different place after having done the work.
Well deserved. And of course, that brings us on to the work that you do now for other people. So talk about being a healing mentor. So how do you take this an awful lot of experience and a lot of work that you've done, and what do you do for other people now?
My work really is about inspiring other survivors to find and walk their healing pathway. The evolving part of healing, so my E in heal, really has two components to it from my experience. And the first one is about the healing tools and resources themselves that are available to any of us. And I work with people and talk to people about taking a holistic approach to healing to the emotional health and doing the emotional healing, right? And whether, that be sort of, I've mentioned hypnotherapy. We've touched briefly on trauma therapy. I talked about movement. I've done a lot of art therapy work, which not actually with an art therapist, where that's what I was doing, pouring my emotion out in painting. I've done a lot of writing. I love being in nature. So for me, all of those are components that need to work together for my healing process. And each one of us is unique on the tools and the resources that I mentioned reading. I've done a ton of reading. So we're all unique in what we need. We're all unique in what we've experienced. We're from a victim standpoint, in terms of the trauma and abuse that we've experienced. We're all unique in the way that we've survived our lives. And I believe that means that we all need a unique but holistic approach to healing ourselves. And so I work with people to fine tune and to bring new ideas about tools and resources, and really to fine tune how they're working with those to make sure that they are getting the maximum benefit for them out of those, right? And there's each one of those has its own process to making sure that you're getting the full benefit from them, right? I've got a lot of experience doing that for myself and talking and working with others as well. The other piece of it then is this deep self-discovery work, right? And so, that work is really more suited for, that's really, I think, where a lot of the tools come into play to help us understand who we are and to deal with what's living inside of us, right? We're actually using those tools. But the intersect of how those are working for people that I work with and whether they're, again, getting that maximum benefit, that's really what I work with people on. My work really is a mission, and I am on a mission to spread my healing message as far and wide around this world as I can. So I love it that you're sitting in London right now and in the UK, and I've spent a lot of time sort of a citizen of the world myself. I've spent a lot of time. I grew up in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, and I've worked all over the world as an adult. So I love it that my words are going global, because that's really what my mission is to spread this message as far and wide as I can, right? So, I do the healing mentor work. I do some of it one-on-one, but really, it's more about people ask me, what is your title? What do you do now? And I love the way that sounds. I mean, healing mentor, when I spell it, it's capital H, capital E, capital A, capital L, heal, my acronym, mentor, right? It's kind of a novel thing that I have and how I refer to myself. So, doing a lot of that now. I do a lot of this. I do a lot of public speaking, big groups, small groups. So really that's my work, is to let every other survivor of trauma and abuse out there to know that they too can heal. You hear me? You too can heal. You hear me? You can do it.
Absolutely. And it's such an important message that people do need to hear. It's good that you're spreading it. And I love, you allude to how everyone's unique, and you went through a whole range of different methods. So we had movement, we had art, we had journaling, we had just reading and everything else. And I think that's another really important point to pull out is, one, everyone is unique. So the journey isn't always straightforward. Life isn't linear. And so it's not as easy as going, I've made a decision, it's going to be easy now. I think you make a decision and it gets harder before it gets easier, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing, though, is the power and the importance of those creative pursuits, the arts.
Yes.
Whether you are I actually work with a lot of scientists anyway, and some of them sing and draw and write and do whatever. And it's really important that they have those outlets. So and I think the message that I want to have for the creative thing is, you don't have to be good at these things. You don't have to be going on a stage and performing. You just have to have creative outlets that serve you, because otherwise, you talked about being emotionless and not having, your emotions come to the front, and using the creative arts as a way to help those emotions to come through. And the more you can do, or the more that you enjoy doing, the more options you have of getting them out your body, basically.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you. So it's whether it's the arts generally, right? So whether it's some sort of, painting like I do, or drawing, or even writing, poetry, music, whether you write songs or you play instruments, even listening to certain types of music, I feel comes into that place for me. But it really is about expressing, it's connecting in a way that allows you to express emotion, and it's private. That's one of the things that I have found most beneficial for me. Some of the artistic and the painting work that I've done as I've been on my healing journey, but also a lot of the writing, the journaling. It's a very private way to get emotions out. And you really, you can write words, whether you're in a journal or you're writing poetry or you're writing song lyrics, and they may or may not ever see the public. When you're getting them out, you can do it privately in a way where you can really express whatever emotion you want. You're not going to hurt anybody, right? It's you and the paper, and that's it. Or you and the keyboard, and that's it, right? And I found the same thing for me. I mean, I love to paint. And when I look back I actually hadn't painted for about 20 years just because of the way that my surviving in my life before I started the intense part of my healing journey after the hypnotherapy. But I look at all of the paintings that I did in succession as I was going through the hardest part of my healing journey. And each one of them has its own story. And I can look at that picture and tell you emotionally exactly where I was and why painting is what it is. And I have all of them in my house because they mean so much to me. But one of them is very raw, painful, deep, angry. There was a lot of anger in the very first painting that I did. It's red, black, and white. Red is not my color. Blue is my favorite color, and you won't see red really anywhere else in my house except for this painting. But it's beautiful. And when I look at it, I understand the expression that I was leaving on that canvas, putting my emotion there on that canvas. And that's powerful, right? To go back and know in the moment that I was really letting a lot out of me. But I look at it today and it's so beautiful and so inspirational to me because I know what it represents. And I think that's a huge part of what the arts can do for us in healing is nobody ever has to look at that painting. It's a beautiful painting. And if I didn't tell you what was happening to me emotionally and when it was painted, you would never know. You would just look at it and go, oh, well, that's a beauty. And the room I have it in my house, it fits very well. It's got an oriental feel to it. And it's kind of the room I'm in my house. I'm actually looking at it right now. When I'm looking over to the side, I'm looking at the painting. But you look at it, you're like, oh, it's a beautiful painting. And if I didn't tell you what went into that and what came out of me as I was painting that, you would never know. But I got a lot out of me, right? And it's done with some various tools, but I like to do it with my fingers as well and with my hands because it's also like a kind of let it out.
Yeah, with the physicality of it.
Yeah,
I kind of now
sure. You could see.
I really want to see now, like your whole painting journey, just from like a purely psychological view of like watching that transition. Maybe you should
I'll send you pictures of it. I will. I'll send them to you.
I mean, like, I just think I'm not. Music was always more my thing, but I really, as I trained in therapy, I really appreciated these outlets. But I also find out the stories behind them amazing, and like you say, to go from someone who likes blue to these extreme, stark, strong, bold colors of red, black, and white. No, it's fascinating. Please do send me a photo. Maybe like have a little website of your art journey, and I don't know if that's just me going on a tangent there. Just fascinating.
I have one of the paintings is on. It's actually a good idea because I have one of the paintings on my website, and actually, I might write a blog about this. Put all three of them in there. So it's what I'm writing now. The book has come out, but I still have more to say to people. So I have a blog that I write. I might do that. So I might write a blog just about that, so I can put them out there.
Please do. Definitely, and send it to me and share it with everybody.
Yes.
And your book's just come out. Tell us about that. And obviously that was part of your journey, but what is it for? How was it called?
Can I show it to you? I would love to.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so this is the book. I don't know if you can really see the beautiful color that it is, but let me turn this light on and maybe you can.
It's a nice.
Oh, there we go. That's better. So yeah, you can see it's beautiful. Yeah.
Very nice.
So it's the book is titled Becoming an Empowered Survivor because that's what I've done. I've become an empowered survivor by going through my healing journey. I really, I mentioned the reason why I wrote the book because I couldn't find the book that I needed and the book that I believe a lot of other people can benefit from, right? Because it is my healing journey, but it's also about teaching. And so it's broken up into those three parts. It talks about my journey with hope, my journey with evolving, and then my journey to explore and know love, which, by the way, I'm still exploring and maybe will be for a while. But I wrote the book really to crystallize my message and to get my thoughts about what the healing process has been like for me organized so that I could speak to people about it. So it's really about that message, creating the message and then being able to get the message out as far as I can, so of course anybody who gets their hands on the books, which I would love for people to read the book, but hopefully you're hearing me here too, right? And, and can find your way to me in other ways if you want to connect. But that's really why I wrote it. It's interesting. You made the comment a moment ago about healing not being a linear process. That was one of the other things that I really struggled with in the books on forgiveness that I found is because the vast majority of them are the X number of steps to forgiveness. And there are many. You can find like 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, 13. I'm like, wow, of course, which number of steps do you pick, right? So, and that's not, it doesn't have this worked for me. And that's how I've written the book, is in a very non-linear way, but I think in a way that's very realistic about what healing journey and what that process is like.
I mean, I guess trying to be fair to those who give steps, the brain does like to have like a clear path, but of course,
100%.
I think it's what you're doing is it just more important, because the fact is those perfect steps don't exist. And even just from a sort of a change curve perspective, acceptance, denial, frustration, sadness, elation, this is the human experience, but it's kind of the human experience on steroids, because what you're trying to get through is so much deeper than just having to change from an east facing office to a west facing office, when those things have first come up. This is about really exploring your side. So I think it's great that you have that book to be honest about that journey. And I guess my take on these things is that people shouldn't be daunted by the fact that it's not linear, because nothing in our lives are linear. This is no different from that.
Yeah.
Nothing ever quite goes to plan, or there's always a little diversion somewhere. And we have to be honest about that. And I think it's great that you've got that in your book, and that you are honest going, it is totally doable. Just don't expect to go A, B, C, D. You're going to go A, Y, T, whatever,
Yes, and you may go back to A, and you may go back to D, right? And that's just the reality of how it works, right? There's just probably 2 or 3 steps forward, and then 1 step or a half step backwards sometimes, right? As you're overall moving forward, but it is difficult. It is for sure. It is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. It was excruciatingly painful at times. I won't lie about that. But it is also the most exquisite thing I've ever been through in my life. And when I step back and look at the process I've been through and where I am today compared to where I was 4.5 years ago, it's awe-inspiring, even for me. It's amazing. I lived it, but I still think it's so phenomenal. And the experiences that I have been really, really fantastic. I've had a great experience. I've now, if you go out on my website, there are 2 blog posts out there, which the most recent one about healing the relationship with my grandfather. I now call it the 5 chapters of my epic saga of healing that relationship. And what I now know to be 3 of those chapters are in the book. And then I've written 2 more really profound and powerful experiences that I've had healing that particular relationship, right? And it's just cool. I'm really had some really, really amazing experiences. So, while it has been, as I mentioned, probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, it's also been super powerful and just a really exquisite journey for me to have had the honor to take. Yeah.
And I'm so pleased you took it, and I'm also so pleased you can share that message now. So thank you. Where can people buy your book, and how can they find you?
The best place to find me is on my website, which is Empowered Survivors, plural, survivors with an S, because I'm trying to make many of us. EmpoweredSurvivors.com. There's a link there to the book where you can get it on Amazon. You can also find Becoming an Empowered Survivor on places like Barnes & Noble and other online platforms where you might shop. You can connect with me on social media. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. If you search Beth Jones Healing Mentor, you will find me. And as of yesterday, my YouTube channel is now going live. So I have a podcast coming in January. So I've started the work to get my YouTube channel going. So that's out there under the same handle, Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And you will find me every place you can connect to me.
Brilliant. And I'll put that all in our show notes as well, so everyone does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Final question then. If someone has heard your story, resonated, feels overwhelmed, what's the first step for anybody thinking about going through this process that you've been through?
Yeah, so I've already said that. So the first step is commitment to yourself. And for me, that came after, I had learned a tiny little bit. I was probably 2 or 3 weeks past the hypnotherapy event for me, which started the process when I, realized this about being a survivor and what I was talking about before, that it was me hurting me, and I needed to stop that commitment to heal. And I think once we make that commitment to ourselves, again, it's the greatest act of self-love that we can give ourselves as survivors. But it also, for me, and I think for many of us, sort of sets that accountability structure to do the work. You commit and you just do whatever it takes to do the work. And that's really the first step for me, is committing. And I would say a very close second, and maybe for me, I needed to talk before I could get to the place where I could commit. It was just my path. But finding someone, whether that is someone who you trust, who's in your circle, or, someone who you want to bring into your circle, you think you might be able to trust. And I'm sort of ratcheting through the people in my mind who I first talked to about what I was experiencing, or a trauma therapist, which is, where I made a huge amount of progress. And the person, actually, the woman has saved my life, literally. Talking is also important, right? It's how we begin to get it out of us, what we've happened, right? What's happened to us is not something that we should have shame or feel embarrassed about or blame ourselves for. And talking begins to release that, to get that out. So I really think committing and talking are two huge first steps to being able to move forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for your sharing your journey. And I really wish you well. And I look forward to see all the wonderful things. And I look forward to seeing that art and the story behind it when you do your blog. Make sure you send that.
I'm going to send that to you. I am. Yes, I will. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.